The Russian army is currently facing significant internal challenges, including conflicts and issues with insubordination. These problems are creating major difficulties for the Russian forces, stemming from Vladimir Putin's decision to increase the army size by 180,000 troops. We're witnessing a troubling trend where current soldiers are opting to desert or simply refuse to participate in the war. According to recent reports from various media outlets like Mediazona and the Wall Street Journal, the number of such incidents has surpassed 50,000, and more than 10,000 criminal cases have been filed against military personnel. Why are Russian soldiers abandoning their posts or withdrawing from Putin's agenda? What is driving this evolution? To bring you the latest information from the front, we're here to offer insights into the situation that has left the Russian military somewhat powerless and immobilized. Make sure to support us by clicking the subscribe button, turning on notifications, and giving us a thumbs up before we dive into this topic. Ukraine has been forced to shift its focus to a war of attrition due to Russia's failures in strategy, operations, and tactics during what was meant to be a blitzkrieg. It appears that Ukraine is capitalizing on the drawn-out conflict to further its own objectives. Reports indicate a growing number of soldiers are deserting Putin's army at a time when Russia is struggling with shortages in both manpower and equipment. The difficulty of relocating entrenched Ukrainian forces in certain southwestern regions of Russia is a clear sign of the personnel shortage amidst President Vladimir Putin's massive campaign in Ukraine. Ukrainian forces have observed desertion among Russian troops, particularly in the Kharkiv region, which can be attributed to significant personnel losses. In May, Russia launched a new operation in the Kyiv region, focusing on the north and northeast. However, Ukrainian forces have successfully stabilized the front line in this region. Currently, intense fighting is ongoing around Bakhmut and its surroundings, only 3 miles from the border and 46 miles from Kyiv. Additionally, heavy fighting is taking place near Lipsy, just 6 miles from the border and 12 miles from Kyiv. Russian troops sent to northern Ukraine to bolster their offensive lack prior combat experience, according to Vitaly Sakharchuk, a spokesperson for the Ukrainian Operational Strategic Forces. Reports suggest that the forces deployed for offensive operations are poorly trained and unequipped, operating with inferior equipment, limited support, and inadequate training. This situation raises concerns about their effectiveness on the ground. In multiple reports, it's clear that Russia continues to deploy prisoners to reinforce its positions in Ukraine, a desperate attempt to compensate for the enormous losses suffered on the battlefield. At the same time, Russia is energetically pursuing those who desert. They are taking bold steps to track down soldiers who have abandoned their posts. For instance, Anatoly Shishinin, a soldier from a remote region of Russia, fled to Armenia to avoid being sent to the front in Ukraine. However, Russian authorities pressured his family and threatened to find him at any cost. Approximately 50,000 soldiers have chosen to desert or resist orders to fight in Putin's war, according to human rights defenders and organizations assisting these soldiers. They seek a much-needed reprieve from the battlefield. However, many have been forced to return, either through guarantees of lenient consequences or threats directed at their families. Lawyers defending these soldiers claim the real numbers are significantly higher than reported. Since the full-scale invasion, there has been a noticeable increase in asylum requests from Russian citizens, although only a small percentage actually gain protection. The debate on whether exiled Russians pose potential threats or assets for national security remains heated among policymakers. Russia has taken increasingly desperate measures to maintain military personnel on the front lines, including offering early release to prisoners, increasing recruitment bonuses, and providing housing and education benefits for soldiers' families. These incentives are intended to encourage Russian citizens to enlist in the army, while foreign nationals are prioritized for citizenship in exchange for military service. Despite these efforts, Russia still faces significant challenges in recruiting experienced fighters, with much of the new recruits having no prior combat experience. Meanwhile, the drive to punish deserters and track down those refusing to fight has intensified, extending beyond the country's borders. As the war drags on, it becomes clear that Russia's military is struggling to maintain personnel levels amid increasing desertions and deteriorating conditions. The State Duma recently passed a law exempting participants in the military operation from criminal liability, signaling Russia's determination to maintain its forces on the front lines, despite significant losses. This situation underscores the complex and desperate state of the Russian military in Ukraine. What are your thoughts on these developments? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button, activate notifications, and give us a thumbs up to show your support. Reports indicate a growing number of soldiers are deserting Putin's army at a time when Russia is struggling with shortages in both manpower and equipment. The difficulty of relocating entrenched Ukrainian forces in certain southwestern regions of Russia is a clear sign of the personnel shortage amidst President Vladimir Putin's massive campaign in Ukraine. Ukrainian forces have observed desertion among Russian troops, particularly in the Kharkiv region, which can be attributed to significant personnel losses.